Mike threatened this morning that they might not want to move out after the end of 6 weeks, and I said I'd hate for us to have a throwdown right here in church, over that. I want to encourage you to come and be a part of this class if you'd like to do so. And I want to encourage you to come and invite others to come as well. I think all of us can look around at the people we know and realize that a lot of people either are in trouble in their marriage or they're just not very happy. And we want to address that. And that's what we're going to try to address in this particular study. So I would encourage you to come and be a part of that and invite others to come as well. Hope everybody got a bulletin. On the back of the bulletin is an outline that if you're going to be in a group meeting tonight will be especially important to you, and encourage you to take notes if you'd like, and then encourage you to participate in a group tonight. If you've not been participating, it's never too late. We've got the rest of October and until the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and then we're going to take a break until after the first of the year. So you're more than welcome to join a group if you've not been doing so. Their information for those group meetings is on the back of the bulletin. Last week we focused on this text. Wise people see trouble coming and get out of its way, but fools go straight to the trouble and suffer for it. We've been examining this important life principle. Somebody fill in the blank for me. Direction. Thank you, John. You didn't say it loud enough for you to hear. I'm sure all of us knew that already. Direction. Next slide. Yeah, he's speaking for the whole row. Okay, gotcha. Direction determines destination. Direction. Not your intentions, not your hopes and dreams, not even your prayers, determines your destinations in life. The path you choose to follow determines your destination and the consequences that you will experience because of your choice. Decisions you make today have ramifications for tomorrow. The paths you choose to follow in your 20s impact your life in your 30s and perhaps even beyond. You cannot go back and recapture those years. You cannot go back and undo decisions you made. You cannot go back and change the paths you chose to follow in previous years. Direction determines destination. But I think most of us understand that choosing the right path can sometimes be hard. One reason is because we don't know the future. And consequently, we rarely have all the information we need as we make choices. But let me just ask you, let's be honest with ourselves. If you did have all the information, would you always make your decisions based on that information? Ever in your life, has someone older and wiser than you told you that if you made this decision, that you will experience this negative impact? Anybody ever had that happen? Did you heed that wise counsel? Most of the dumb decisions I've made in my life were not the result of a lack of information. Now, I may not have had all the information regarding those decisions, but I had enough to make better decisions than I did. The text we're going to look at this morning was written by Solomon, a king in ancient Israel. Solomon wrote 3 books that are part of what we call the Old Testament. He wrote Ecclesiastes, which you probably should not read until you're at least in your 50s. And here's why. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon is looking back over his life and he's examining all that he had done and all that he had accomplished. And he comes to the conclusion that it was all meaningless. like trying to catch the wind. So see, if you read that in your 20s and 30s, you're going to say Solomon does not know what he's talking about. But if you read it in your 50s and maybe in your 60s, as you begin to reflect on your own life, then you'll probably say, there's a lot of truth in what Solomon said. Solomon also wrote the Song of Solomon, or Song of Songs, and you probably should not read that until after you're married. Because it's about the unabashed love between a man and a woman. And if you read it, especially in a modern language version, you're probably going to get a big red face as you read it. But Solomon is perhaps best known for the book we call Proverbs, which is a collection of wise sayings. And Solomon tells us why he wrote Proverbs. These are the wise sayings of Solomon, the son of David and king of Israel. They will help you learn to be wise, to accept correction, and to understand wise sayings. They will teach you to develop your mind in the right way. You will learn to do what is right and to be honest and fair. They will teach young people what they need to know and how to use what they've learned. Even the wise can become wiser by listening to these proverbs. They will gain understanding and learn to solve difficult problems. And you might read that and think, well, Solomon seemed to think pretty highly of himself, didn't he? Well, yes, I think he probably did. But he also had good reason to invite others to learn from his wisdom. Solomon was probably in his late teens or early 20s when he became king in Israel. And being so young, he was a bit overwhelmed by all the responsibility that being king brought into his life. And God told Solomon, ask for whatever you want me to give you. In essence, God gave Solomon a blank check, so to speak, and told him just fill in the amount. Now, imagine you're, let's say, 21. And you're the king. You are the absolute ruler of a nation. And God tells you, what do you want? You just name it, and it's yours. What would you ask for? This is what Solomon asked for. Lord my God, you have made me the king in my father's place, but I am like a small child. I don't have the wisdom I need to do what I must do. I am your servant here among your chosen people. There are so many that cannot be counted. So I ask you to give me the wisdom to rule and judge them well, and to help me know the difference between right and wrong. For without such great wisdom, it would be impossible to rule this great nation. Solomon could have asked for anything. But he asked for wisdom to choose right over wrong and to guide his people to honor and serve God. And as you can imagine, God was very happy with this, and he said to Solomon, you did not ask for long life and riches for yourself. You did not ask for the death of your enemies. You asked for the wisdom to listen and make right decisions. So I will give you what you asked for. I will make you wise and intelligent. I will make you wiser than anyone who ever lived or ever will live. And I will also give you what you did not ask for. And he tells Solomon that I'm going to give you a wealth and honor and greatness in the eyes of other nations and a long life. You know, when you look at Solomon's life, you realize that Solomon, if anybody could say to us, if you want to make a good decision, if you want to choose right paths, just read my books. But is that what the wisest man who has ever lived out of God's own mouth, is that what he said to us about making difficult choices? There's much wisdom to be gained from what Solomon wrote, to be sure. But here's what he told us to do when facing life-shaping decisions. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. in every area of life, after you've gathered the available information, after you've sought for wise counsel from others, after you've prayed, trust in the Lord. The secret to making good path choices is not information, though that is important. The secret to making good choices is placing all your confidence, all your faith, all your hope in the Lord, with all your heart. Now, the word heart in the Old Testament represents the emotional and the intellectual part of being human. Heart encapsulates the Old Testament teaching which Jesus emphasized that we are to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. With everything we have. A love that trusts the one who is loved. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And lean not on your own understanding. Now, the Hebrew word lean means to prop something up against something else. We grow in knowledge. We grow in wisdom because of our experiences, which help us during our next experience. But Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, cautions us against thinking, hey, I've experienced enough, I'm smart enough, I'm wise enough now to go it on my own. Don't prop your life up against how smart and how wise you are. Lean against God. And in all your ways, submit to God. Another version reads, with each step you take, every step you take, think about what God wants. This is important. Choosing the right path begins with submission. Choosing the right path does not begin with what you know. It begins with who controls your life. Solomon urges us to entrust every significant path decision to God. And that is so important because the flesh is always pulling us toward what it wants. And it often wins the day if we are not wholeheartedly submitted to God. Every aspect of your life, not just on Sunday, not just your religious life, every path of life, relationships, finances, marriage, children, entertainment, weekends, hobbies, you name it. Every part of life has a God component to it. Decisions that involve a path choice are difficult oftentimes because we allow too many other voices to be a part of the decision-making process. Seek God's will above all and submit yourself to that. And when you submit to the Lord, He will make your paths straight. And that word straight means that He will make the way clear. He will show you which path to take. Now, we've all talked to people whose lives are upside down, and they have 2 or 3 options, and none of them are good. And they say, I don't know what to do. And your response is, I don't know what you should do either. But I do know what you should have done back when you had better choices. When you saw the danger coming, before you jumped off the building, and now your only choice is to hit the sidewalk and be in a lot of pain. And the person's like, gee, thanks a lot. I could see what I should have done. And that's exactly the point. That's why God, who does know the future, says to us, would you please let me help you with this? Would you seek me in this? And when we trust the Lord, when we lean on His wisdom, when we set aside our own desires and we submit to Him, the path we should choose becomes amazingly clear. Solomon summarizes all this with these words. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. Now Solomon here speaks out of his own experience. Because while he was king, instead of trusting God's promise to protect Israel from all outside enemies, Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived out of the mouth of God, decided that he would marry the daughters of other kings in order to form alliances, which was a common practice in those days. And it wasn't really that Solomon didn't trust God. He's just like we are sometimes. He thought he needed to help God a little bit by means of his own wisdom. And it wrecked his kingdom and divided his family. Now you may think that you've learned a lot and you've grown in wisdom because of past experiences, but the next big thing you face will be unlike anything you've experienced before. And while your knowledge and wisdom will be helpful, it will not be enough for you to clearly see the path that God wants you to choose. Now, before we finish, I want us to break down the last 6 words in this text. Fear the Lord. Now, some people suggest that the word fear would be better translated respect or revere. And perhaps it would. But it would also be a mistake to take fear completely out of what Solomon said. God is going to keep the promises He makes. To you, to me, to a nation. God is going to keep His promises regardless of whether that means blessing or pain. Is everybody listening? Do you understand what God is saying to us? Listen to what I'm saying. It is the voice of experience. The paths we choose have predetermined destinations. If we choose a path that honors God, we will be blessed. If we make a different choice, then we will experience whatever consequences lie at the end of the path. Guaranteed. Fear the Lord, because He means what He says. And shun evil. Remember this? Fools go straight to the trouble and suffer for it. How much pain could we avoid if when we saw trouble up ahead, we simply got off that path and onto a path that would result in blessing? Another version translates the first part of verse 7, don't think you can decide on your own what is right and what is wrong. But that doesn't mean that it's a complicated question. Read the book. It tells us what's right and what is wrong. The challenge of choosing the right and avoiding the wrong is seldom about which is which, but about whether or not we're going to do the right and avoid the wrong. The Bible tells us the wrong things the flesh wants to do are clear. The path is clear. The danger is clear. The consequences are clear. See the evil and avoid it at all costs. Now, this is the text we've been looking at this morning, and I want us to read it together. I want to read the words in white, and then I want you to join me in reading the words in yellow. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. Now, as we leave this morning, I want you to take this with you. Pride eventually overrides wisdom. I see Mike squinting a little bit. That's not real plain, is it? Pride overrides wisdom. This is why smart people make dumb decisions. That's why we can look back on some of our decisions and say, how could I have done that? And what do we say next? Almost every time. I knew better. Pride, which is us saying, thanks for the opportunity, God, I will take it from here. Pride, if not set aside, will eventually override wisdom. And how easy that is. How easy it is for pride, for us to take pride in our own wisdom. And that's why you and I need to admit that we're really not as smart as we think we are. And that any trouble we found ourselves in the past is primarily of our own doing. And that we need to trust our faithful God, who promises to clearly show us the paths that we need to take. I mentioned last week, and I'll reiterate this morning, I'm not going to determine the outcome of what I said based on how many people walk up here this morning. But I do know that a lot of us need to examine the paths we're on and why we have opportunity to get off some paths and get on different ones. I want you to remember that I'm as close as a phone call. Our elders, their phone numbers are in the bulletin. They are as close as a phone call. My door is always open. And if you're struggling with a path and you need to talk to someone about it, it might not be me, it might not even be one of our elders, but you need to find somebody who is a spiritual person. They are seeking to choose paths that honor God. Find somebody to talk to.